You're listening to the Caramel Apples Podcast, the show that brings you a retro vibe, both crunchy and sweet. This week, we'll be deep diving into the fond memories surrounding the amazing, fantastical film, The Neverending Story. Are you ready to embark on our Orchard Trek Retro with us? Our destination will be Fantasia or Bust. Let's go.
The Neverending Story.
Yeah.
This was yet another most nostalgic retro gem that was indelibly etched into our young brains from the very first time we watched it. It really made its strong impression on not only us, but on pop culture as a whole back then.
Yes.
Fantastical stories, movies really were all the rage back then, weren't they?
Oh, you said it, Coop. And it was something we readily got into and truly enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Imagination was huge back then for us youth and was highly stoked, encouraged, and cultivated as it came flying at us from just about every angle imaginable. We're Gen Xers, so like this was our time.
Yes.
But it was really that particular angle and aspect of our youth that we can easily recall. Thank goodness.
Uh-huh. And as we've stated in so many other Orchard Treks, truly enjoyed.
We did.
Hence our podcast.
I
One and one truly does equal two.
like that kind of math.
It really is most fun and something special to be able to take time, each week and talk about so many of our childhood memories with great fondness.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you ready to revisit 1984 and head back to Fantasia, Kennedy?
Oh, you know it.
Better be.
Yeah, a little late now. So the tagline for the Never-Ending Story goes as follows. A troubled boy who needs a friend finds a world that needs a hero in a land beyond imagination.
That's a nice summary or layout for our retro adventure to begin this week.
Indeed it is, and appropriately so. So based on that, we open up our awesome discussion about a young troubled boy named Bastian Bucks, who lives a dreary existence in being targeted and tormented by a group of school bullies. Quickly stated, but that's a big deal, unfortunately, in today's world.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
The young actor Barrett Oliver pulled this role off and was very spirited as Bastian.
Yeah.
He pulled off that shy, outcast child very well.
Yeah.
Whose go-to when stressed or scared was books. At the very beginning of the film, there was a profound scene where he and his father were having a touch of breakfast before heading off to their respective destinations of the day, work and school.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Barney Bucks, a widowed workaholic father, was played by the talented Gerald McRaney of Simon and Simon and Major Dad fame.
Oh, man. That right there is a nice blast from the 80s right there, Coop.
Indeed, Kennedy. Gerald McRaney's portrayal as Bastian's father provided a thoughtful touch to how deep both he and Bastian's hurt of not having his mother around, really, how bad it really was, you know?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And their anguish was well defined and set the perfect tone for not only that scene, but for the whole movie. Barney appeared loving and concerned for his young son, but distant, unable to fathom Bastian's mind.
Yeah, that was very well conveyed. I do wish the film had followed through by, returning to their relationship at the end
Yeah.
and, explored a little deeper how Bastion changed as a result of his experiences in Fantasia.
Hmm.
I mean, that would have been crazy cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they just wanted to leave it up to your imagination, but it does seem like it would have well rounded out the story.
Yeah, yeah. And they were thinking, which we'll get to that in a little bit, they were thinking of other installments
Oh, yeah,
maybe to explain that, but alas.
yeah.
For this one, that's not particularly the angle that director Wolfgang Peterson wanted to take. So,
Yeah.
yeah. After all, in regards to the Neverending Story, we are diving into the imagination of a 10-year-old boy.
Yes. So, on that note, back to Bastion. On his way to school one day, he is once again chased by bullies, but escaped by ducking into an old bookstore where he finds the old book proprietor engaging in an intriguing, read or of a book.
Uh huh.
And Bastion's curiosity is piqued, and he asks the bookseller what it is that he is exactly reading. He, in his cranky way, advised him against reading it, stating that it's not a safe story like your regular everyday books.
Oh no, now he's on going and done it. Way to go opening up that can of worms. Curiosity.
Exactly.
But since that was left wide open, what happens next?
Well, the phone in the back room, it rings and the bookseller goes to answer it. While gone, Bastian snatches the book left lying there and attaches a note promising to return it. And the name of that book was The Neverending Story.
Oh, there we
Dun,
go.
dun, dun, dun. Yes.
And besides having bully troubles and having an avid interest in reading good books, Bastion heads on to school but skips class, opting to head to the school attic along with his intriguing read and delicious looking green apple. Just needs a little bit of caramel drizzle on it, that's all.
Right?
So he begins to dive right in, where he's drawn into the mythical land of none other than Fantasia, which is in desperate need of a hero to save it from impending destruction.
Yes. So The Neverending Story is one of my favorite old school throwbacks.
Oh, yeah.
The story is both organic and ethereal, but in a way simple but effective.
Mm-hmm.
This is something special, and as we watch it, it never ceases to amaze. It's truly a remarkable movie, escape, and experience.
I concur, Cooper. The Neverending Story is such a stunning and unique movie with its highly fantastic feeling. It's like the gateway, so to speak, to unlock one's imaginations wide open to also join in on the adventure, much like Bastion.
Yeah. And we're all still only in the beginning stages of our discussion this week, and already we have some crazy excitement of brewing. And as many a hardcore fan and avid viewer might be aware of, but we'll be happy to share it with our listeners anyway, is this. Fun fact: The Neverending Story is based on the 1979 novel by Michael Ende, and how appropriate that both the wonderful components of both the novel first and then our movie came about within our decade travel parameters. How very Carmelicious.
Oh, how very sweet that is, Coop. We got all sorts of special traveling going on this week in our Orchard Trek Retro. So we have just referenced from what played out in the film. The elderly proprietor piqued Bastion's curiosity in regards to the book. But this is no ordinary book. Mr. Coriander warned Bastion that reading it could be dangerous, which, when you actually sit and think of the angle of what that warning meant,
Yeah.
well, he's eventually drawn into the mythical land of Fantasia fairly effortlessly.
Which is now desperately needs a hero to save it from destruction. Kennedy, this movie easily dials up the feeling of truly being something out of this world.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the finest fantasy movies of all time, a timeless nostalgic classic. So, what's next? Who is our hero? And what is this business about destruction of Fantasia?
Well, all valid questions there, Cooper. That helps us to continue on our Orchard Trek retro on one of our favorite childhood movies. The Neverending Story book Bastion is reading describes our fantasy world of Fantasia slowly being devoured by a malevolent force called the Nothing. The childlike empress who oversees rule in Fantasia has fallen ill, which now our hero, yeah, he enters the scene to go on a quest to find a cure, believing that once the empress is well, the Nothing will no longer be a threat. Our hero's name is the brave young warrior Atreyu, played by Noah Hathaway. The name Atreyu is an ancient word which means bold guardian.
And here's a fun fact there is actually a music group by the name of Atreyu.
Oh, seriously? Really?
Yes. So just kind of
Okay.
interesting. I'm not really sure if they got their name from, being fans of the movie or not. That would be an interesting thing if any of our listeners might know the answer to that.
That would be interesting. Yeah, because that is kind of rock, right? Or alternative, maybe?
Definitely rock.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So Atreyu is given something to help guide and protect him on his quest. Fun fact number one, he is given a special medallion called Orin, that of which he could wear around his neck. Curiously, this was the same symbol that was affixed to the front leather cover of the book.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And on the back of the Orin, there's an inscription on the back of it, and it says, "Do what you wish."
Be careful, people.
Yeah. Fun fact number two. Now, this is cool. Did you know that the original Orin for this film now hangs in an enclosed glass display in Steven Spielberg's office?
Oh, are you kidding?
Yeah, he had quite a bit of share in helping Wolfgang Peterson tweak the film in preparation for the American box office.
That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
especially with what it stands for. Do what you wish.
Oh, yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Cool fun facts you just shared there, Coop. I love it. So it was the little but big details that revealed itself in the never-ending story that truly powered this film and helped us ignite our imaginations so that it was the stuff that dreams are made of. So now Atreyu sets out on his quest, but the Nothing summons a vicious and highly aware rat-like creature who seeks to off Atreyu. So this character's name was Gamork. Things are getting good and picking up speed now, especially with all of these cool, fantastical characters that we'll be introduced to.
Oh my, yes, the characters. This film, hands down, is like a one big dream sequence playing out, right?
It is.
This is what one would no doubt find these amazing surreal situations going on in any youthful imagination back then.
Oh,
Any
yeah.
given kid. Let's be honest. Um, weren't we all bastions?
Yes. I know we were.
Yeah. Now, Atreyu's quest leads him to our next interesting character. It was a giant turtle advisor named Morla, the ancient one in the swamps of sadness.
Mhm.
Here's a bit of retro caramel trivia, our dear listeners. But face to face, Atreyu went to ask valuable information he would need to be a future aid to the childlike empress. Um, but less than a couple minutes in, Morla develops a severe allergy to something which is demonstrated by her sneezing hard and often. Can you recall what she claims was her problem or plight? Weigh in, Orchard Archivers.
Yes, I think we might have a similar allergy. And might I add, not a bad one to have.
Right?
Somehow, through all of the sneezing and struggling, Morla finally managed to direct him toward the southern oracle. So there were a couple of interesting scenes of the Neverending Story that played out in the Swamps of Sadness. This scene with Morla was one of them. Oh, we forgot to mention another character that was most memorable in our thoughts of this charming film. That was Atreyu's companion. Yes, he was a loyal companion when he first set out on his quest. Atreyu didn't set out on foot. No. We remember fondly his horse Artax, but their companionship was short lived, for Artax failed to believe that he could get through the thick, quicksand like mud in the swamp. His doubt ended up a sad, deeply emotional scene where he sinks and is lost to the swamps of sadness. Appropriate.
Yeah.
I so recall the sheer fear in Artax's eyes as he was sinking.
Yeah. There are a lot of semi traumatic triggering scenes in this film where, looking back on it and our deep dive this week, it was some wildly terrifying situations that took place that we can vividly recall.
You said it.
Kids and their imaginations were so strong. Something like this or worse, like that, could really happen in a child's mind. Man, you talk about some PTSD.
Facts.
Now, this mention happened involving a few mishaps in production. Noah Hathaway was hurt twice during the making of the movie. While learning to ride a horse, his horse threw him off, then stepped on him.
Oh, oh.
Ow! Two, while shooting the drowning sequence in the Swamps of Sadness, his leg got caught on the elevator and he was pulled underwater.
Oh, that's tragic. Wow.
Yeah, he was unconscious by the time he was brought to the surface.
Good grief. How scary is that?
Yeah, no doubt. People were probably scrambling and kind of panicked, you know?
Yeah. And to your point, Cooper, the situations were quite tongue in cheek, as well as the sets, the collective sets that pieced together nicely the fun experience a la Fantasia, and the many cool characters that filled that space. The scenery sets and costumes were well done and was a visual feast for the eyes.
Just like a literal storybook.
Yes, I know. It's just gorgeous to look at, especially for the times it was produced in. We're talking early 80s here.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now it's time to talk of some of the fantastical characters introduced. So we're going to do some of the other ones that fascinated us watching this movie.
All right, so here we go. So we just discussed how our young warrior just suffered a major personal loss of his beloved horse Artax to the Swamps of Sadness. But Bastian keeps on reading, which has Atreyu gathering himself to continue on this quest.
Mm-hmm.
And Atreyu finds himself three new friends. That would be the sweet but cantankerous scientist couple, that of the highly ornery Ingiwuk and his wife Fergal, who would nag her poor husband and help nurse Atreyu back to health. And then we can't forget our lovable Falcor, who was affectionately coined as Fantasia's luck dragon. Fun fact, did you know that Falcor is actually a 43-foot long motorized creature with 6,000 plastic scales and pink feather fur? Yeah, his head is 3 feet tall and long and has a long tongue in the mouth.
Falcor was the coolest.
He was.
Yeah. I mean, he looked like a huge white dog with floppy ears, a very distinct nose or beezer.
Yes.
Huge, round, innocent, kind eyes, and a voice that could easily and did command both respect and attention.
He sure did. Falcor was nothing short of being a key player or hero himself. So it is noted how cool and spectacular Falcor's voice is, like we can hear it in our mind's eye right now.
Sure can.
So you may ask exactly who's responsible for Falcor's voice. Fun fact, This was made possible by Mr. Alan Oppenheimer. But here's the crazy part. If you're a huge stickler for detail, you may have noticed hearing Falcor's voice through a couple other characters of Fantasia. Oppenheimer spoke for Gamork and Rockbiter characters, but we're not done. We get to plus one of his contribution, where we'll share at the end of our Orchard Trek Retro this week.
Oh, how very cruel you can be, Cooper Lee. But I guess we'll just have to wait to the end before you'll share with us what the plus one is. Whatever could it be?
Inquiring minds want to know, right?
Yes, and you're so bad. So you mentioned the Rockbiter and Gamork, who showed up later on in the film. The Rockbiter was a lovable creature who showed up on the journey along with other entertaining characters. We think of Teeny Weeny, the dapper messenger who rode on the back of his racing snail. Then there was the raggedy troll like character named Schweinhund as Nighthawk, a messenger riding a narcoleptic hang glider bat.
Oh, the sleepy bat was adorable.
He was sweet, wasn't he?
Yes.
Coop was always a sucker for super cute characters in these types of films. And then there was also Carrion, um, a centaur servant of the Empress played by Moses Gunn.
That make believe land of Fantasia is a true place of escape and wonder, ruled by the benevolent but mysterious childlike empress played by Tammy Stronach. What I can say of our child hero characters of Bastion, Atreyu, and the childlike empress were all terrific kids who, for their young ages, really brought their A acting game, right?
I agree. Mm-hmm.
They nailed it.
Yeah, did.
The actress who played childlike Empress had an exotic, otherworldly quality about her that made you believe that she exists only in Fantasia.
Oh, much agreed, Coop. The creative folk behind these movies really put a lot of time and effort to magnify the details that really help drive and explain the movie as it plays out. This right here is the whole point of making a movie. So it's an awesome way to dive in and escape.
Yes. And here's why the Neverending Story worked. The various creatures in this film are the greatest examples of why making creatures for movies like this were clearly old school awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Good old fashioned foam rubber and tangible puppets and sets and animatronics were used instead of the all too numerous examples of, dare I say it, the overload of CGI.
I know.
We find it now in most movies,
You do.
even when there's no need. Like there's no special effect, they just kind of throw it in anyway.
It's even in commercials now. I mean, so
Yeah.
what the tricks are up their sleeve.
Yeah.
There goes the magic and wonder.
Now, they did use this hint of CGI in the Neverending Story, but again, it was not overloaded, which is the point.
Yeah, because it's like ruining your meal with adding way too much spice, sugar, or salt.
Yeah,
All you need is just a hint to enhance what's going on, but whatever.
I know. And it was this creative technique applied that really made the many strange, fantastical creatures of the Neverending Story stand out
Hmm.
and absolutely come alive.
That's what I really appreciated about Falcor.
Yeah.
Like when the way they designed him, he's just you wanted one. You wanted to be friends with him, right?
Right.
I mean, he's just so big, fluffy, and cool, cute, friendly, all at the same time.
And he can fly.
And he can fly. But his great sense of humor and his dog like appearance makes him absolutely irresistible. And the brilliant choices of the child actors incorporated into the story was well done too. We already described the childlike Empress. Her role is minor, but very relevant and significant.
Fun fact. Did you know that the actress Tammy Stronach, that this was her only movie role ever?
Hmm.
It was kind of surprising to learn that bit of info.
Yeah, that is wild.
Yeah.
And as we've said, she did a smash up job in that role. But the male choices are primo too. Oh, you got Treyu. He's a different kind of hero, a young warrior and true hero child, which was unusual,
Mhm.
but a very captivating concept.
That long black hair really fit well on him. And Atreyu resembled a Native American youth quite well.
That's right. And Bastion was a shy, imaginative, but clever hero child choice as well.
Mhm.
So all three brought it, in our humble opinion.
They certainly did. And The Neverending Story is one of my all time favorite movies back then. The scenery, sets, and costumes were a visual feast for the eyes. Just gorgeous to look at, you know?
It really was.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show. So, back to the unfolding story that we are facing here with the nothing.
Uh huh.
The only thing that can stop the nothing and cure the childlike empress is being given her a new name by a human child,
Uh huh.
um, who can only be found beyond Fantasia's borders.
See, this is such a neat, nostalgic story.
Yeah, yeah, it is. And back to the proprietor, he wasn't able to do it, but he's reading this intriguing story, so it's like it had to be specific. It had to be Bastion, right? That's so
Yeah,
cool.
it is.
So here's a point where one of our fantastical characters appears. Fun fact: at one point, Atreyu comes face to face with Gamor, the sinister rat-like creature, who then reveals that he is indeed a servant of the force behind the nothing and was sent to intercept the Empress's chosen hero from saving her. How would this be done?
Well, the nothing is beat by, and the childlike empress can be saved by her hero reading the Neverending Story and calling out her new name. So, you Orchard Archivers, I don't know about y'all guys, but you can see the scene now where he actually does this, Bastion.
Right.
But I don't know about you, Coop, but I never knew what he said.
I know. If I remember right, I think hubby and I put it on subtitles one time, and I can't remember exactly what the name was, but it's like it still doesn't even sound like that's the name.
Yeah, so now, thanks to the internet, we know. But back in 84, you were like, just kind of like, well, it was a good movie. But what do you think, Orchard Archivers? Do you remember, whether it's through research or you just knew or you read the book, what was the name that Bastion called out to rename the childlike empress? Weigh in.
Yeah.
So Bastion becomes increasingly disturbed by hints that the characters in story are somehow aware that he's in there reading their adventures and being able to hear or even see him at certain points.
Yeah.
I see. I love this.
Yeah.
So Gamork explains that Fantasia represents humanity's imagination and is thus without boundaries, while the nothing is a manifestation of the loss of hopes and dreams.
Yeah. Wow. It's
Mm-hmm.
so intriguing, isn't
It
it?
is just going over it. It's like this is some exciting stuff.
There are no words.
They're not, apparently.
So after revealing these vital key pieces to the puzzle, Gamork then becomes an unfortunate victim of the Nothing's destructive chaos. Fast forward a bit, and Falcor and Atreyu make it back to the childlike Empress, who assures them that they have brought back her hero, rescuer, to her.
Mm-hmm.
And Bastion, while continuing to read the Neverending Story, suspects that the childlike Empress actually indeed means him. But he's having a hard time wrapping his head around that, though. That's kind of hard to believe.
It would be, though.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening here?
And the film is promising since the very beginning, with those stunning, dazzling, colorful clouds, which brought it that mystical touch,
Uh-huh.
and the beauty of the Ivory Tower Palace. Oh my goodness. The golden hue emitting around the Sphinx, and the blue ethereal hue, that just surrounds the Southern Oracle, are also distinctive attention to detail that really made scenes most memorable.
Yeah. And the Neverending Story is a wonderful example of a timeless story told with awesome creatures all throughout and dazzling vistas painting the land of Fantasia. So, again, back to good old practical effects. These are what are used for that wide range of creatures, going from the creatures, the makeup, animatronics, and
Yeah,
fill in scale models.
yeah.
So, one can't help but marvel at the work and effort put into this film.
Yes, absolutely. It's really amazing how one gets so involved into the story.
Yeah.
Well, while watching the Neverending Story, one can feel deeply involved in the story as much as Bastian does. The deep involvement from Atreyu's perspective and contribution on his quest as he confronts the unknown in order to save Fantasia. This includes both his emotions and despair.
Hmm.
Now, there's one other thing that helps verify the awesomeness of this movie, and that was the music connected to it.
Good recollection there, Coop. That's another major strength of the Neverending Story, and that it's its memorable soundtrack.
Yeah.
The music therein was the cherry on top and made this movie a truly remarkable experience. The beautiful soundtrack added to this stunning, unique movie that fantastic feeling. That feeling of being part of something that is out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
This is what makes it a timeless classic.
Home run. Fun fact, the soundtrack was the work of Giorgio Moroder and Klaus Doldinger,
Yep.
including synthesizers, pan flutes, brilliantly implanted the ever 80s genial synth pop orientation. It's so 80s, and I very much welcome that.
Yeah.
The songs are all beautiful. Another great song, and probably the most recognizable, is in regards to the Neverending Story, is a song bearing its namesake by Limmel and Beth Anderson, uncredited.
Oh, the music is brilliant,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
matches the story in making it both mystical as well as effective.
True.
The never ending story is ideal for that youthful escape and wonder and has a wonderful message. Now, you have to really pay attention or you might miss it.
Yeah, which obviously this was a good story with a captivating plot, so there was more to tell. The Neverending Story had great expansive potential, but efforts to franchise this title didn't make many waves like the first one.
Uh oh.
Try as they might, attempts were made and dampened at a second and third installment of The Neverending Story, even for diehard fans. The sequel and prequel fell flat at the box office, and we're not a bit surprised, right?
No,
They
no.
really weren't that good.
Nope.
Having brazen in your face flops were more of a rarity back then. Whereas the majority of films currently, even the first installment's offerings, are more often than not flops.
Yes.
How embarrassing. And it makes you long for so many things from back in the day.
It really does. And like we talk about this, we hammer this all the time. It's just what it is.
It's a pet peeve.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, the math does not add up on that.
No.
But, even the human, real world message the never ending story brought to the table, the tender and delicate side of what was playing out, which fueled Bastion and his adventures. We mentioned this at the beginning of our episode this week, but a brief scene with both Barney and Bastion Bucks together in the kitchen, getting their breakfast before heading off to school and work respectively. Barney expertly set the translated tone of their world, where he appeared concerned, loving, and distant, as Coop mentioned before, and he was unable to fathom Bastion's mind. So again, I kind of wish that the film followed this. This would have been a good setup for 2 and 3 and whatever else they wanted to do, right?
Yeah, and perhaps maybe that child would have come back, the one
Mm-hmm.
who was the original Bastion, because then subsequently, I can't remember if they had the same kid do 2 and 3, or if it was just different children in every single installment. I can't remember now, but yeah, I think having him would have also helped drive the story more if he had come back, and definitely if they would have shown some kind of resolution between him and his father.
Yeah, I mean, it's like stick with who we know. I mean, that's what worked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's too hard, I guess, too. I mean, because we don't have that now. And not with just this movie.
I know. I mean, to me, it's like it seems to be basic that it's not just a story, it's not just the characters, it's not just the music. All of it worked together. You need to get as much as that together if you're going to try to do it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think those with the dollars just they're like, we can make it work no matter what. And it's like, okay. So now you're just spending money and not making any. All right. Have fun with that. So back to the original best Neverending Story. I guess we'll just have to use our imaginations for what um, that was as well, for the ending, as you were stating.
Okay.
But we both love this movie and how it easily takes you back to a time where stoked imaginations reign supreme.
Oh, yeah.
So we urge you to watch it if you haven't seen The Neverending Story, and to rewatch it if you have. It's that good. And be forewarned that it contains fairly deep ideals and content for being of a childhood perspective.
That's so true. Thank you for that preface, Cooper. Um, we'll give only some juicy ending tidbits to tie off our Orchard Trek retro this week. But as per usual, this was a fascinating discussion that's been a long time coming. Hopefully, without giving away too many spoilers. Realizing that the never ending story will repeat itself forever without his intervention, Bastion names the Empress, and the name he called out, and appears with her in Fantasia, where he restores its existence through his own imagination. The Empress has also given him Auron, on the back of which he finds the inscription, as we mentioned a little bit ago, do what you wish.
Fun fact, for each wish, Bastian loses a memory of his life as a human. Unaware of this at first, Bastian goes through Fantasia, having adventures and telling stories, all the while losing his memories. In
Mm.
spite of the warnings of Atreyu and Bastian's other friends, Bastian uses Orin to create creatures and dangers for himself to conquer, which causes some negative side effects for the rest of Fantasia.
Well, you know the old adage to be careful for what you wish for. You may just get it.
Yes, yeah. And quite the intriguing twist to all of this. It's deep stuff.
It is.
Pay attention to what the characters say, and you'll get the full grasp of what the film is saying about humanity. Most importantly, the death of dreams.
Yes.
Okay, you orchard archivers, let's go back into our mental time machines and see if we can ramble this bit of trivia. Okay. Um, in flight, can you remember where Atreyu is knocked from Falcor's back into? Loses the Orin in the process. There were all kinds of neatly named places throughout the story. So weigh in and let's ignite this fascinating discussion.
Oh, that, yeah, we'll have to dig on that one, huh?
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool question. So the childlike empress further explains that just as Bastion is following Atreyu's story, others are following Bastion's, making this part of the never-ending story. As the nothing begins to consume the ivory tower, the empress explains that Bastion must call out her new name to save Fantasia. Disbelieving he has been incorporated with the story, Bastion denies these events actually happened. Alas, he gives in after she pleads directly to him to call out her new name, running to the window of the attic to call it out.
Do you know that it literally took years and help of the internet to be able to finally know what he yells out at the attic window?
I know, that's what we were saying a little bit ago. Like, what did he say? We never know what he said.
You
Thanks,
know,
Internet.
I wonder if that's kind of what they wanted it to be like, because you could make it whatever you wanted in your own
Yes.
mind.
And that made it more, I mean, like, things were just so cool back then. Like, that made it more mysterious.
Yes, and it helps draw you further in.
Yep.
So that was always part of the mystery surrounding the story. So it worked in keeping things most interesting.
It did.
And near the end, Bastian awakens with the Empress, who presents him with a grain of sand, the sole remnant of Fantasia. The Empress tells Bastian that he has the power to bring Fantasia back with his imagination. Bastian recreates Fantasia and flies on Falcor's back to see the land and its inhabitants restored, including Atreyu and Artax.
All right.
Yeah. When Falcor asks what his next wish will be, Bastion brings Falcor to the real world to chase down the school bullies.
Oh my goodness. I can visualize this right now.
Yeah, yeah,
It is so epic.
truly.
The music playing during all of this scene was epic and felt very storybook, and we, the audience, were along for the ride.
I think that particular song you're thinking of is entitled Happy Flight or Bastion's Happy Flight.
Okay, okay, I can hear it. I didn't know what it was
Yeah,
named.
yeah.
Okay, so the amazing and perfect soundtrack helped capture our hearts, and you won't let go until the credits fill the screen. So it's amazing how one gets so involved into the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so impossible to ignore it because it captures one's attention and heart. Now, here's the part where we promised of a +1 fun fact in regards to the familiar voice talents that made the lovable Rockbiter and Falcor come alive. We had mentioned earlier that this was done by Mr. Alan Oppenheimer. Well, the film narrates at the end that Bastion had many more wishes and adventures. But that's another story. Well, guess whose familiar voice had the honors of doing that memorable narration? Yeah, it was Mr. Alan Oppenheimer.
Oh, yeah.
I just love that.
Full circle, right?
Oh
That's
my gosh,
so
yes.
cool.
Yay!
Yeah. So, The Neverending Story is more than one of the greatest movies from the nostalgic 80s. And it's one of the best, most beautiful, fantastical, distinguished movies ever. A fine movie with a very poignant message. I can just about bet you that Mr. Wolfgang Peterson knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah.
Because, this is his masterpiece.
Word.
Fun fact. Did you know that The Neverending Story is a German production filmed in English with mostly American and English actors?
Hmm.
Yeah, the majority of the film takes place in Germany. And get this, it was officially released under its original title, D. K.
Yeah, that is crazy German right there.
Mm.
I'd be like, boy, that's just my best guess right there.
Right. Diane Lich. Yes, it's T. That's.
Guggenheim. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Not a clue. Anyway. Despite being filmed in English.
Nice try. I don't think I'd attempt it either.
9.
We are not German.
No.
So, what more can we say about the Neverending Story? The visual beauty of the impressive scenarios give the movie a real sense of wonder. Does the film have the important elements of fantasy yarn? You betcha it does. As we've covered in depth this week in our Orchard Trek Retro, it was one of the best kids' fantasy films of the 80s. It takes you back to the warm feelings of childhood and captures the very essence of imagination. The Neverending Story really is more than just a movie. It speaks to that part in all of us that reminds us to never let go of our dreams. It is a story that will never end as long as there are people to appreciate its message and take it to heart. Everyone should see this caramelicious charm of enchanting nostalgia and remember, Fantasia is real, and Fantasia can rise in you.
Love what you heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. To tune into future treks into the Orchard Archives, meet up with us here next week. Same time, same place at the sweet spot. And it would mean the world to us if you could leave us a shiny review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and explore more iconic memories. Thank you.